All right, so let's dive into some of these mysterious drone sightings.
Yeah.
I know they've been all over the news lately,
Hey.
happening all over the U.S.
Yeah.
And everyone's wondering, what's fact, what's fiction, and what's just plain weird, right? That's what we're going to unpack in this deep dive. We've got a whole stack of news reports here, eyewitness accounts, even some expert analysis to try to figure out what is really going on.
You know what's really interesting to me is just how many different places these sightings are happening. I mean, we're not talking about just remote areas or like, dark skies or something. These things are popping up everywhere, from quiet suburban backyards, like in Temecula, California, all the way to the busy airspace over the Jersey Shore. Even military bases like Camp Pendleton.
Yeah, I was reading about those Temecula sightings. Just imagine, hanging out in your backyard.
Yeah.
And you see these massive silent drones, some almost the size of a small car, just hovering around.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not your neighbor's kid messing around with a toy drone, especially with a Marine base nearby.
Right, and that's a detail that keeps popping up, the silence. It's one thing to see a strange object in the sky, but when something that large is moving around without any of the usual buzzing or whirring that you'd expect from a drone, it just makes you wonder, what kind of technology are we even dealing with here?
Okay, that's creepy. And it's not just people on the ground who are seeing these things, right? We've got reports from pilots, too.
Exactly, and these aren't just casual weekend flyers. We're talking experienced commercial pilots, people who are trained to identify aircraft. A United Airlines pilot in Oregon described seeing like 3 or 4 targets moving at different altitudes. He called it pretty crazy. Another pilot, also in Oregon, reported a red object moving at incredible speeds in a corkscrew pattern.
Like, corkscrew pattern? That doesn't sound like any drone I've ever seen.
Right, and what's even wilder is that we've got air traffic control audio where they're actually telling pilots to avoid the UFO out there. That's not something you hear every day on the radio.
So even the officials are calling them UFOs. But what does that even mean in this context? Are we talking about little green men here?
Well, maybe not little green men, but the term UFO is pretty fitting here because these objects are genuinely unidentified. It's not just that people don't know what they're looking at. Radar systems and other tracking technology aren't providing clear answers either.
Okay, so we got large silent drones, strange flight patterns, and even the authorities are stumped. This is starting to sound like a real-life X-Files episode. But are these just quick glimpses? Or are people observing these things for longer periods of time?
There are reports of both, actually. Some sightings are brief, but others involve people watching these objects for, several minutes. There's a case of a news reporter in New Jersey who initially dismissed the drone reports as, kind of overblown, but then he actually witnessed a whole swarm of them himself. He described their fixed-wing design and blinking lights. They were even spotted by the Ocean County Sheriff's Department, who launched their own drone to investigate. But the mystery drones were easily able to evade them.
So these things are fast, they're silent, and they can even outmaneuver law enforcement drones. That suggests a level of technology that's, a little unsettling, to say the least. It's no wonder people are starting to get a little freaked out.
Yeah, you're right. In Bowie, Maryland residents are expressing confusion and, they want answers. And there was a mother and daughter in Minnesota who described these lights as driving them crazy. It's not just curiosity for some people these sightings are causing. Genuine concern and anxiety. It's totally understandable that people are feeling uneasy when you have these unexplained objects appearing in the skies,
Yeah.
Behaving in ways that we don't have explanations for. It's natural to want some reassurance. And that kind of brings us to the really fascinating part here. How are the authorities responding to all of this?
Yeah, because from what I've read, it seems like there's a kind of a disconnect between the public's concern and the official response, or lack thereof.
Exactly. You've got all these eyewitness accounts and strange behavior, and yet the official response seems to be, nothing to see here, move along. The Biden administration has downplayed the sightings, suggesting that they're probably just manned aircraft and that they don't pose a threat.
But wouldn't downplaying the sightings just fuel more conspiracy theories and things like that? Doesn't that create more distrust than transparency?
That's a really good point, and it's not like the government is ignoring the issue altogether. We know that both the FBI and Homeland Security have been investigating these reports. They've even received over 3,000 tips about drone sightings, averaging 92 per night across multiple states. I mean, that's a lot of data.
So they are looking into it, but they're not really sharing much information with the public. It's like they're saying, we see it, we're investigating it, but don't worry about it, which is precisely what makes people worry even more.
Right. And it's not just the public that's demanding answers. Lawmakers are getting involved, too. There are members of Congress from New Jersey and New York who are actually calling for briefings on this. They're expressing concern about potential safety risks. Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut has even gone so far as to suggest shooting down unidentified objects.
Whoa, hold on, shooting them down, that seems a bit extreme.
It just goes to show how seriously some people are taking this. When you have elected officials talking about using force against these unidentified objects, it raises the stakes considerably.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we've got concerned citizens, we've got frustrated lawmakers, and we've got a government that seems to be holding its cards close to its chest. The whole thing is starting to feel like a giant game of hide and seek with information. But before we jump to any conclusions about, cover-ups or conspiracies, we should consider all the possibilities, right?
Absolutely. Critical thinking is crucial here. We need to examine all the angles and not rule anything out prematurely. So let's play devil's advocate for a moment here. Could some of these sightings be attributed to misidentified aircraft, or weather phenomena, or even hoaxes?
Yeah, I've heard some people say it could be things like satellites, especially those Starlink satellites, or maybe large agricultural drones. Is there any validity to those explanations?
It's certainly possible. People can misinterpret what they see, especially in low light conditions or at a distance. Our brains are kind of wired to find patterns and make sense of the world, and sometimes that leads to us seeing what we want to see rather than what's actually there.
Ellie, misidentified aircraft is a possibility, but I'm still stuck on those pilot accounts. I mean, these are trained professionals who spend their lives in the air. They know what a plane looks like, they know what a satellite looks like, and they're describing movements and speeds that just go beyond anything we know conventional aircraft are capable of.
You're right to point that out, and the fact that these pilot accounts often align with descriptions given by witnesses on the ground does lend some credibility to the reports. It suggests that there is something genuinely unusual happening.
Okay, so misidentification is possible, but maybe not for all of these sightings. What about hoaxes? Could some people be creating these events just to, stir up trouble or get attention?
We can't discount that possibility entirely. People love a good mystery, and some folks are willing to go to great lengths to create one. Think about all the elaborate crop circles and UFO sightings that have turned out to be clever pranks. Hoaxes definitely muddy the waters and make it harder to separate genuine reports from fabricated ones.
But then again, if it was just a bunch of pranksters, wouldn't we have figured it out by now? I mean, this has been going on for a while, and nobody has come forward to take credit or reveal. You know how they're pulling it off?
That's a good point. And the fact that law enforcement agencies, like the Ocean County Sheriff's Department, have been unable to track or intercept these drones does suggest that whoever is behind this, if it is a hoax, they have a pretty sophisticated operation going on.
So we've got some possible explanations, but none of them seem to fit perfectly. With all the details we've got, it seems like we're still missing some crucial pieces of this puzzle.
We are. And to help us try and fill in some of those gaps, we need to bring in an expert voice, someone who's been studying these kinds of unexplained aerial phenomena for a while.
Okay, you've piqued my curiosity. Who's this expert?
His name is Ryan Graves, and he's a former Navy pilot and the co-founder of Americans for Safe Aerospace. He's not just some armchair UFO enthusiast. This guy has firsthand experience with unexplained aerial phenomena, and he's not afraid to speak up about it.
A former Navy pilot, huh? That definitely adds some credibility to the conversation. What does he have to say about all of this?
Well, he actually provides a really interesting counterpoint to the government's downplaying of the situation. He acknowledges that there's a stigma surrounding UFO reports. People are afraid of being ridiculed or dismissed as crazy. But he emphasizes that pilots are increasingly encountering unexplained phenomena, and it's something that needs to be taken seriously.
So he's not buying the bile. It's just misidentified aircraft explanation.
Not entirely. He says that pilots are trained observers. They know what they're looking at, and they're seeing things that defy conventional explanations. He even goes so far as to argue that the U.S. possesses the technology to identify these objects, but that there's a deliberate lack of action or explanation from the government.
Okay, now we're getting into some potentially controversial territory. Is he suggesting a cover-up?
He doesn't use that word specifically, but he does raise concerns about transparency and accountability. He points out that these unidentified objects pose a potential safety risk to aircraft, especially at high altitudes, and he even suggests that adversaries could be observing and taking advantage of this apparent vulnerability.
Wow, that's a pretty serious claim. So he's not just saying, hey, look, something weird is happening. He's saying, this is potentially dangerous, and we need to address it.
Exactly. He's bringing a sense of urgency to the conversation and challenging us to think critically about the official narrative.
So we've got these sightings, we've got these official responses that are raising more questions than they're answering. And now this expert is saying that we need to take this seriously because it could have real-world consequences. This is a lot to process.
It is. And the million-dollar question remains, what are these things?
I was just about to ask that. Do we have any solid theories? Are we dealing with advanced drones from a foreign adversary? Secret government technology?
Or could it be something even more out there?
Yeah, I have to admit, this is where I start to get a little uneasy. Not knowing what these things are is almost more concerning than, any specific sighting. What are the chances that we're dealing with? Some super advanced technology from another country.
Well, it's certainly a possibility. The technology for unmanned aircraft has been advancing so rapidly. What we're seeing could be a glimpse of something, far beyond what we even thought was possible. Maybe even some kind of classified program that, we're not even aware of.
It's like something straight out of a spy movie. But if it were another country, wouldn't someone have stepped forward by now? You'd think they'd want to take credit for it, having this kind of technology, right?
Yeah, that's the thing about this whole situation. The lack of any claim of responsibility just deepens the mystery even more. It leaves us with more questions than answers. And that's where things get really intriguing.
Okay, so let's dive into some of the more puzzling details. We keep hearing about these extreme speeds and these unusual maneuvers. What exactly are people describing?
Well, witnesses have reported seeing these drones make sudden changes in direction almost instantaneously, like going from a hover to a high-speed dart in a split second. And they describe flight patterns that just don't make sense for conventional aircraft, like sharp angles and rapid ascents and descent.
So not just your average drone then. I'm trying to picture how something could even move like that. Are we talking about some kind of anti-gravity technology? Or maybe a new type of propulsion system?
It's hard to say for sure. The technology involved could be something that we haven't even conceived of yet. But the descriptions we're getting definitely point to something beyond our current understanding of, aerodynamics and drone capabilities.
And we can't forget about the size of some of these things. Witnesses have reported drones that are the size of small cars. How does something that big even stay airborne?
Exactly. That's another detail that really challenges our assumptions about what's possible with current drone technology. It makes you wonder about the materials they're using, the power source, the overall design.
Yeah, I've seen those big military drones, but those things are loud and pretty clunky. These things seem to be operating on a whole other level. And then on top of all that, we have the fact that they're silent. How do you make something that large fly without any noise?
That is one of the most baffling aspects of these sightings. It's as if they're defying the laws of physics, our current understanding of propulsion systems, especially for objects that size, suggests that there should be some kind of audible noise.
All right, so let's put all of this together. We've got large, silent, highly maneuverable objects appearing in our airspace, exhibiting capabilities that seem to go beyond known technology. And we have a government that's acknowledging the sightings, but offering very limited explanations. Where does that leave us?
It leaves us with a genuine mystery, and that's what makes this whole thing so captivating. It forces us to confront the limits of our current knowledge and to consider possibilities that we might have dismissed before.
This whole thing reminds me of those classic science fiction stories where humanity encounters something completely alien and it changes our understanding of the universe. Are we at one of those turning points right now?
It's certainly tempting to think so. We're dealing with something unknown, something that challenges our assumptions about technology and what's possible. And the fact that this is happening right here, right now, adds a sense of immediacy and urgency to the whole thing.
It's a little awe-inspiring, but also kind of unsettling at the same time. Like we're peeking behind the curtain of reality and catching a glimpse of something we weren't supposed to see.
I know exactly what you mean. And that's the beauty of a mystery like this. It invites us to engage our imaginations, to ask big questions, to consider perspectives that we might not have entertained before.
So where do we go from here? What can we as everyday citizens do with all this information?
Well, the most important thing is to stay informed, to keep asking questions, to not accept easy answers. Pay attention to the news, read up on different theories, talk to people who have had experiences with these sightings.
And I guess we have to be open to the possibility that we might never get a definitive answer.
That's right. Some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved. But that doesn't mean we should stop exploring, stop seeking knowledge, stop trying to make sense of the world around us.
Well, you've given me a lot to think about. This whole drone thing has gone from a curiosity to a full-blown fascination. I'm definitely gonna have to keep digging into this.
I encourage you to do so, and I encourage all of our listeners to approach this mystery with a sense of wonder, a healthy dose of skepticism, and above all, an open mind.
Well, that's it for our deep dive into the mysterious drone sightings. We've explored the eyewitness accounts, the official responses, the expert opinions, and the lingering questions. But now it's your turn. What do you make of all this? What theories resonate with you? What questions are you left with? This is a mystery that invites your own exploration, your own interpretation. So keep digging, keep questioning, and keep looking up.